Good afternoon, relatives, friends, and neighbors. Thank you all for joining us for our special lunchtime chat panel. I'm so excited about this conversation today, and I want to thank the Central Council for making this space to have this important conversation in this moment. I am Catherine Edwards, and I serve as the First Vice President of Clinton and Hyda's Executive Council, and also as the co-chair of the Tribe's Violence Against Women Task Force. I want to take a moment and apologize up front and issue and let you know there may be some triggers because this is a difficult topic to discuss. And I'm going to ask Sam and the communications team if they can post Dr. Tina Wood's info and probably the Strong Hearts 1-800 number in the chat in case someone needs to reach out, because we know this is an extremely difficult but extremely courageous conversation for us to be having today. And I'm so happy that that our panelists have joined us today to talk to be able to talk to you about this subject. We're joined today by several Indigenous men for a discussion on violence against Indigenous women and toxic masculinity. Today's topic is intended to share information on our Clinton and Hyda Violence Against Women Task Force. We're going to hold a discussion with the panel, and we're going to provide you a legislative update on the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization, and we're going to answer some questions and provide some resources. And as I said a moment ago, this is a difficult topic. So if you need to reach out to somebody, we really hope that you do. And we're happy that you're joining us today to have this courageous conversation. So we'll do some housekeeping up front. We want to make sure that you hit like on Facebook so you can be entered in the door prize drawing. Winners are going to be announced at the end of today's session. You can ask questions of the panelists, just write them in the comment section, and the communications team, I believe it's Sam and Chloe today, are going to make sure that we get them. And if we can't get them to them all, they're going to make sure that they get the answers and get them posted or sent out to you. So now that our housekeeping is done, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. And after their introductions, we'll give you some background before we dive into our conversation and our updates and our call to action. Thank you all for joining us. And before we do begin, I want to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourself. Alfie, we'll start with you.
Oh, direct Sydney. Sigop di wayu dispet wada diptegu timpienu gishide lit giriganitsku Alfie Price di wam comes to Amish. Luam go to Troutland new some Segedwin. So my name is Alfie Price. I'm Killer Whale Clan, Simshian Haida and Tlingit, and I'm happy to be here with all of you today. I'm pleased to be invited to share in this important conversation, and feeling proud to be amongst some strong leaders. Sydney, so thank you all. Hatni Walaishku, all my relations.
Thank you, Alfie. Bob, we'll go to you.
Shaganastaya Hatu Asal Planadi Ayahat Kagwan Tan Yadi Tuchluidi Dutchkunk. My Tlingit name is Shaganasta. I am a raven, dog salmon. I'm a child of a wolf or bear and a grandchild of a killer whale. It's a tremendous honor to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Conrad?
Shish, Shikshani Ish Ayaxai, Kagwan Tank City, Angunwe Duck City, where Akish has NAD, Klish go has with the Shitan, Gunchish NAD, that. So I'm Shikshani Ish. I grew up on the lands of Angun, my father's people, and my grandfather's people. So it's really good to have my father's people here, the NAD, and then it's really good to be here on Zantakahini, the land of the Occoquan, which is my great-grandfather's people. And it's really good to be here amongst, these good men. And so I'm really honored and grateful to be here and to have so many good teachers.
Thank you, Conrad. Jean?
Gonna chish gayao yohok to a sock, duck dane tana cut, kalkit the kalk, the condo I hutiti, which kitanyari a hat, ha ishik the hinu to a sock, slink it away we are slaggy Filipino, gonna chish. My name is Gene Tagaban. My Slinkit name is Gayao. I'm of the Duck Dane Ton clan, Raven Freshwater Sockeye clan from Huna, child of a Wishkatan Eagle Shark clan from Aquan and Juneau. I'm Cherokee, Slinkit, and Filipino. Amongst the Cherokee people, we pronounce it as Slagi. I'm of the Wolf clan on my Cherokee side. And my people on that side came before the trail, a place that is now known as Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. I'm also Filipino. My last name is Tagaban. In the Philippines, it's pronounced Tagaban. And so my grandfather comes from Bentoc, and my great-grandfather comes El Locos Norte. And just that right now I'm on the territories of the Coast Salish people, on the lands of the Puyallup, in the shadow of Mount Tahoma, I tell people. Konaschish, Wado, Salama.
Thank you, Jean. Michelle?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Demert. My Tlingit name is Jacathat. I'm Kahitsatan from the Mansfoot clan. I'm a child of Takwanedi. My father was Lawrence Demert of Kloak, and my mother is Sharon Demert. I'm very honored to be here as the Law and Policy Director for the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, and I just really, my hands go up to Tlingit and Haida and to all these men, and our first Vice President, Catherine Edwards, and I just have to, I know this is introductions, but Catherine shows up at every single consultation and tells the federal government what's going right, but more often than not, what's going wrong. And it's she is just a fearless leader, and I just really look up to her so much. But I felt like I needed to say that, and also to thank our president, Richard Peterson, who from the very beginning, whenever we raise these issues, he's supporting and he's at the front, cutting edge, supporting us. And so anyway, sorry, long introduction. Goodness cheesh, goodness cheesh.
Goodness cheesh, Michelle. Lyle?
Yekatu sa kingit enaki ki ish pagwan tanakatati. Ak ishas yashtakat kiksati kunas cheesh. Ako ayukpan ksati. Akan iyan yashtakat tanakati kunas cheesh. Ako akan iyan yashtakat teki na haida jahawa. Ako akan iyan yashtakat suitskan simsian so. Ako Irish, ako English ksati. Akan iyan. He has yashtakat aktentan. Ik eoksatini. He has yashtakat inedi. Ik eoksatini kunas cheesh. Ik eoksatini. He has akatas yashtakat tihitan. Ik eoksatini. Stuka hatati ya wuskana kudia dia yeki. Yashtakat yahan. Thank you, folks, for this invitation and opening up these doors so that we can come stand by your side. My name is Keith Ish. I'm Kagwantan. I'm child of Kikseti and also Hawaiian. My in-laws are the Kanasati Raven Starfish, Dekina Haida, Switskan Simsian, Irish, and English. I also acknowledged my grandfather's people, the Daptin Tan, my grandfather's people, the Dineti, and my aunties, the Tihitan, the Chish. I also said it's an honor to be able to be invited and stand here with you folks. Yeah.
Thank you, Lyle. And that's the introductions of our panelists, and I can't wait to start talking to them. What an awesome, I just thank you again. Makes my heart feel so good that you guys were willing to answer this call and come talk to us. So we'll do some background about the VAWA task force before we get into our questions. The task force was established by a resolution in the Tribal Assembly in 2018. It was meant to be a community-driven response to end domestic violence and to address the cases of missing Alaska Native women. The task force is comprised of 8 members: Michelle Demert from Seattle, Leona Santiago from Juneau, Violet Sinsmeyer from Yakutat, Carrie Lynn Dodson from Ketchikan, Rebecca Edstrom from Ketchikan, Bob Sand from Sitka, and our co-chair, our esteemed co-chair, Pat Alexander from Sitka. I also want to take a moment and acknowledge the former Seattle delegate, Pamela Dalton Stearns, who diligently worked on that resolution and served as one of our first co-chairs for this task force. We really appreciate the work, and we appreciate you being here with us today. Like I said, we established in 2018 through a resolution adopted at the Tribal Assembly, and our goal is to end domestic violence and address the cases of missing and murdered Alaska Native women. We've created partnerships with the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, and NCAI's National Violence Against Women Task Force. We've provided testimony to the Department of Justice, the Office of Violence Against Women, and the Office of Victims of Crime. We've also advocated for a pilot project for Alaska so that tribes can exercise special domestic violence criminal jurisdiction. You'll hear about some of that from Michelle in a little bit. Some of our recent task force activities have included the Anchorage Summit, Keeping Our Families Safe, MMIP and Human Trafficking Symposium Planning, Community Response Planning with the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, MMIW and Law Enforcement Panel Discussion, Natives Online, Native Issues Forum, MMIW Update, Government to Government Consultations, and other MMIP, MMIW, and Human Trafficking meetings. As they all come up, as Michelle told you, we try to make sure that we are present in there and that our voices are being heard. And so before we dive into our discussion today, we want to take a moment of silence to think about those who have experienced violence and to hold them up in our thoughts and give them hope for renewed strength. Thank you for that. So before we begin, we're going to take oh, sorry. We just did our moment of silence. It gets to be a difficult topic, as I said earlier on. Indigenous women are disappearing and murdered at alarming rates throughout the United States. Nationwide MMIWG movement has exposed how Indigenous women and girls are targets of violence, abduction, and homicide. The crisis is complex and requires action-oriented focus on healing justice, accountability, systemic change, policy advocacy, awareness, training, technical assistance, support, and prevention. And some of this is why we're here today, because we know it is this multi-pronged approach. We're going to hear about the legislation. We're having these conversations because we want to bring about some healing and talking about changes and making changes to systems and bringing about some awareness. So that's some of why we're here today with this panel. So I want to share some statistics with you to kind of lay the foundation for the conversation that we're going to have today. And you'll see these statistics. This is hard because today the world's focus is on the crisis of war in Ukraine. But at this very moment, in one of our communities, navigating a war zone in her home and probably working to keep the peace and protect herself and her children, many have died or survived at the hands of someone they love. And I say survive because we know the scars of trauma are difficult to overcome, just like the scars of war. And we know this to be true. We know that at this very moment that that's going on. More than 4 in 5 American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetime. More than half Alaska Native American Indian women have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. More than half have experienced physical violence by intimate partners. Almost half have been stalked. And they are 1.7 times more likely than white women to have experienced violence in the past year. Native women face murder rates more than 10 times the national average in some countries and are almost 2 times as likely to have experienced rape as non-Hispanic and white women over the course of a lifetime. These are difficult statistics. And like I said earlier, this is going to be a difficult conversation. If you are feeling sad or triggered, make sure that you call one of the numbers that are being placed in the comments for you. So now that we've laid that foundation, let's go to our panel with our first questions. So the first question is for you all, is to start our conversation. Tell our viewers in your own words how it was important for you to answer our call and that you wanted to be a part of our panel today. And I'm going to go in order that I see you on my screen this time. Alfie, we'll start with you.
Oh, Deutschen. So when I first received the request, the invitation to come speak today, I had to think on it a little bit because this is such a heartfelt, a deep goat or inner being, or tuwu thing that affects all of us. And so it gave me a lot to think about, to ponder, to shore myself up, to be able to express myself on this. So I appreciate the invitation to be here. And through my preparations, I went to my language. I learned the best things from Sim'ai. And so it occurred to me that we are called upon, us panelists here, and all of us Native men in our community, to be Gitwelk. Gitwelk is our word for warrior, but it doesn't just mean fighter. Gitwelk means the people who do things. So we're called upon to do things, to stand up, to protect our people, our women. So when I was invited, it gave me a lot to think about, and so that's what brought me here today, to share in this discussion with some strong people on this panel.
Thank you, Alfie. Jean?
Thank you, Catherine. What brought me here and in doing this work? I've been doing this work for several years, and I'm just going to go back when I was younger, in my early 20s, being in relationships that the trauma that I was seeing, the acting out, and things that were just happening in this relationship that just weren't making sense to me. And so I was like, I'd call up these helplines. What's going on? Why is this happening? And just started to look more into it, and just seeing more of these patterns of the violence against women, and the trauma that was happening. And so I just continued this work, and seeing it within my own family, and what was happening. And what really, I just gotta admit right now that I'm feeling really emotional right now, being on here with you, being on here with these men and those who are listening. That's how we have people from all over the country listening in on this. But why I do this, and what really makes me mad, which motivates me, is that the greatest threat to our women and our LGBTQ relatives, to their safety and their wellness and their health, are men. Are men. And that really makes me mad. So how can I be part of that solution? What can I do? What can I do to bring that health, that wellness, that awareness, and that healing? That healing. And so that's just a short answer to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Lyle?
Reason for me, when I received this invitation to sit on the panel with all of you, is I think about the relatives that it impacts. It doesn't end in just that moment. And I get tired of people saying, oh, it happened in the past, get over it. That's something that sticks with you forever. I want to be a better brother. I want to be a better uncle. I want to be a better dad. And I always want to be a better husband. For all those reasons, it's the reason why I came here. Because I'm always going to be on that path to make sure that everything that I do, everything that I say, is to uplift and understand how it impacts my family members, those that I love. So Chish for the invitation to sit on this panel so that I can hear from other men, sisters who are sharing this information. Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Chish. Conrad?
Yeah, geez. You know, when I got asked to be a part of this panel at first, I think it was last year, and my first thought was thinking of, thinking of others who might speak to it a little bit better than I can. And there's events in my life. I grew up very fortunate, and I want to acknowledge, I have a privilege as a man to not have any experience firsthand of the things that our sisters go through. And I grew up very fortunate, being surrounded by strong people who identified as women. I have a strong mother, I have a strong grandmother, and they made me feel loved, and they made me feel cared for. And so, I've always felt comfortable being more surrounded by those who identified as women. And there's things that come up in my life where sometimes people feel comfortable sharing things with me. And it shows my privilege as a man as to be impacted by secondhand of the information. And sometimes these things come up for me where I get completely engulfed in all these different kinds of emotions. I don't know what to do. I question the next steps of like, okay, what do I do? What can I do? And so it caused me to really think deeply about what my roles are in playing a supportive uncle, a supportive brother, a supportive, friend, a supportive partner. Because, I'm not confrontational at all, and I try to figure out ways to be preventative. And I long for ways to try to figure out how to support the people that I love, that I grew up with, who feel comfortable enough to be around me. And so it's really important for me to surround myself with, good men, to have that community, to have people I can go talk to figure out how to better uplift, our sisters, and to support my people. And so, after giving it some thought, and I'm so grateful that you reached out to me again, so that I can participate and try to contribute as much as I can to the space, as lovingly as I can.
Ashish, thank you, Conrad. Bob?
Yes, welcome into my home. I really, when I was asked to be part of this panel, I immediately said yes, because I'm very passionate about this issue. I grew up around alcohol and never really knew my emotions until I became much older. And I always thought that I had to be a tough Tlingit man and have a tough voice and be strong. But I've discovered that the longest journey that I've had to take is to the heart, and that I had to learn to get in touch with my own emotions and get in touch with my obligations as a human being, to be a good human being. I can be a good human being, but I wondered if I could be a good man. And that one required much more work. And I'm fortunate that I have my culture, and I'm fortunate that there are elders and ancestors that were really good mentors for me. And I'm now humble enough to set aside my manly attributes and get in touch with my female side of my heart, because we come from everything I own goes through my sisters, goes down through my sisters. So we're part of that culture, and the balance, the feminine balance with the male makes us even better people. So I'm very happy to get in touch and even to cry once in a while is healthy for men. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Michelle?
So I'm really pleased to be part of this panel today. I won't be talking about the male toxicity because I was fortunate to have some really great great father, great uncles in my life. However, I do this work because too many sisters I've seen too many sisters live in fear. I've seen the death of our sisters and brothers, and I personally am a survivor of childhood sexual assault, and I often share that, and I also share the 34 years of sobriety that I have, because I want people to know that if you're hurting now, there is hope, and I'm always here for anyone, and so just message me on Facebook. But that's why I'm here, and I look forward to sharing what everyone can do to make some change. Thank you. Goodness cheese.
Thank you, Michelle. So a little bit about toxic masculinity in our topic today. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men to behave in a certain way. It's likely it's going to affect boys and men in some fashion, and it refers to the notion of manliness, which is like domination, aggression, the idea that you have to be tough, and not showing emotion, like, like Bob said, is it okay for men to cry? But, most boys are taught that they can't cry. And this is what has become known as toxic masculinity. So, and I want to hear from our gentleman panelists. We're going to ask you some questions on male toxicity. And we'll start. The first question is, does it exist in your community? And what do you think are some of the ways that it's demonstrated? And Lyle, this time I'm going to start with you.
One of the ways that we experience it within our community is sometimes when we talk over our women, like almost like their opinion doesn't matter. We speak over them. And that's one of the most common things that we'll hear within our groups. And it's a struggle to put that aside, and as one of our former brothers said, to shut up and listen. And that's one of the things that I think we should be doing, is just being quiet and listening and being present to listen to what our sisters, our aunties, our wives, our partners want to say to us. Other ways we see it within our community is, unfortunately, women have to look over their shoulders anytime they want to go out and do something. They can't just go out and enjoy life like everyone else. That's something that we as men don't have to ever worry about as often. And that's something that, those are a couple of examples that I see within our community.
Thank you, Lyle. Conrad, I'm going to you next.
Yeah, good. Sheesh. Just to agree with my brothers, the whole emotions thing definitely comes up. As I mentioned before, I was really fortunate to have, my mom and my grandmother who encouraged emotions, and, I'd be feeling totally fine and I'd be doing okay. But they noticed that something was off with me. And so they would just hold me and just be like, what's going on? You know, it's okay. It's okay. And that's all they would say. And I would just break down. And, you know, there's not spaces created for young men or for boys or for men in general, not commonly enough to have those kinds of emotions. And sometimes, you know, like when it comes up for long-haired men, you know, sometimes our young ones don't get the opportunity to see our men with long hair, and they only think that girls are the ones who have long hair. And it gives me an opportunity to talk with them about our history, our ties with our hair, and our ties with the land. And so, you know, making sure that we're engaging with our youth in that way. And some of the other ways that, like my brother Lyle was saying, was talking over our sisters, and, you know, gaslighting and mansplaining, and that tends to come up, you know, quite a bit. And I try my best to catch myself when I do it myself, because I tend to try to, when I talk, and then sometimes I'll catch it and I'll apologize immediately after to my sisters that I'm with. And so, you know, it even pops up in my personal life, but one of the ways that I try to treat that is just catching myself and being self-aware of the things that I share and how I share them. And so I feel like those are some of the other things that tends to pop up in the community.
Thank you, Conrad. Jean?
Thank you. Toxic masculinity, does it exist in my community? Yes, yes. And one of the ways that I see it as existent is that treating women or girls as objects, you know, that they're there for the pleasure of men, and therefore just for men to the dominance of men, or be obedient to men, you know. And you see it as simply as, even when you go to the supermarket and the man just walks ahead of the woman, and that the woman is always trailing behind him. I mean, there's those simple things. Or especially in our younger generations, oh no, not just younger generations, even the older generations, but the gawking at women, you know. And as we said, that women, Lila said, they don't even feel safe to be able to just to go out at nighttime, or walk alone, or walk from the store to their car, you know. And there's a totally different mindset when women, you know, my wife, she thinks about that all the time at nighttime. Just to going from the school, she's a teacher, to her car sometimes, or going to the store, and that's on her mind. I don't think about that. I don't think about those things. And then the belief system too, limited beliefs that women's place is in the kitchen, keep them pregnant and barefoot. I mean, these are like some of these belief systems that are still out there, that are being promoted. And so yes, toxic masculinity is everywhere. And you know, and just turn it on the internet, or, you know, it's just right there. It's right there. It's right in front of you, on the TV, the programs that we have, commercials, every place. And so is toxic masculinity there? Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Jean. Bob?
Toxic masculinity. Wow, I had to stutter my words there for a few minutes, but I finally could pronounce it. I think it's all about control, and that the men who practice that, I get a sense those guys are pretty lonely, and they're always acting tough and building up their muscles and I get the impression that they're so alone and that they don't know how to share their emotions. And I was very fortunate to have 6 sisters growing up and learning from my sisters. And the other thing I was very fortunate was to learn how to treat my Raven sisters in particular, that you don't just treat them. I don't know how to explain them, but you treat your Raven moiety sisters with a lot of dignity, respect, honor, and you should be able to treat all women like that. I was very fortunate to have a mother that trained me to treat moiety sisters good. And that helped me a lot later in life as well, to watch myself on a daily basis. When I look into a mirror and shave and wash my face, I can't do that if I have low self-esteem and that I do something bad. So it's a daily practice to be a good man and to treat people good. So I do it every single day, every morning, and I sleep good at night.
Thank you, Bob. Alfie?
Oh, yes, definitely toxic masculinity exists in our communities, in pretty much all of my circles. I've been examining this concept of toxicity recently. You know, if somebody brings toxic traits into your circle, it doesn't necessarily make them an evil person or a bad person. You know, if you examine toxicity in your physical body, there's something not right. There's something unhealthy that's causing problems. And so I've been kind of narrowing it down to this concept of ego. And, you know, men are built up in our society through television commercials and movies and what have you to be the big macho dude and take what you want. And so if there's this idea of ego that feeds toxicity, and you may, as a man, walk through the world being toxic and not really even be aware of it. It takes constant vigilance for us to examine ourselves and our motivations. We have to look to our God consistently, our Tulu, our inner being, what makes us who we are. The more you pay attention to your God, the more you see this toxicity around you. And it's not easy to deal with. It can come from people that are close to you or that are important to whatever work you're doing. But, you know, we have to find ways to protect ourselves and each other through the course of this. So definitely, it's a heavy issue that we all have to be consistently aware of.
Thank you, Alfie. And before we move on to the next question, is there anybody that wants to add to the answer they've already given? Lyle?
Some of the toxic masculinity and symptoms that we kind of put up, and it has to do with how we receive messages, is how we dress, how we look, and then also how we depict and put individuals forward. And one thing that I started doing and started enjoying doing is one thing is painting your nails. It's simple as that. I mean, I know some folks will look down at that and say, oh, that's not a guy thing, or at just putting people down for just the simplest things. And that's something that we see within our community. I mean, for our nieces and nephews who want to enjoy the simplest things, we find that the uncomfortable men who are seeing that are the ones that speak up the most and saying, no, that's not what a guy does. That's not what guys do. You go out and you chop wood, you hunt. Well, shoot, I can look good. I can do my nails. These are things that we just take for granted. I mean, have fun with life. That's one thing that I see within our community is the simple things of how an individual dresses, how an individual does their makeup, or so on and so forth. Sheesh.
Sheesh, thank you. I'm going to move. Oh, Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. The toxic masculinity too. Oftentimes we think about that, the perpetration that it's against women, but it's also that toxic masculinity can be a perpetration against our LGBTQ community relatives as well, and against other men. And the bullying. I mean, you see that bullying that's happening not only in schools but in the workplace and even in the streets or wherever we're at. You know, within our own organizations, corporations as well. You see that going on. So toxic masculinity is not just a perpetration against women, but it's against all our relatives who are out there.
Thank you. I'm going to take us to our next question. There's no role in life more sacred than being a parent or a partner, an uncle, grandfather, brother, or a cousin. But as looking at and then maybe thinking about partnerships, right? When you guys get in relationships with a significant other, wife, or whatever that is, as you reflect on your own life, can you describe ways that you see that a man can be a strong partner or parent or uncle? What are the ways that you can be strong and healthy or not toxic? What does that look like? Jean, you're still up on my screen, so I'll start with you.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. First thing that I just that came to my mind when you said that, being in a partnership and being in a marriage or whatever that is for you, is being present. Being present. You know, and as Bob was saying earlier, learning about our emotions, being present to those emotions, and being present to the needs of our partner too, as well. And that's, as Lyle was saying, listen. About just sitting there and listening without think about the answer first, you know. And in a partnership too, a partnership is, you know, it's a partnership. It's not a favor. So it's that partnership too is like helping with men can do dishes. Men can, if we could work a chainsaw, we could definitely work a vacuum, you know, and help out. My wife does not let me touch the laundry though. She doesn't want me to touch the laundry. She's like, no, but I can fold them. So there's those things. But at the same time, I'm out there in the yard doing these things, but it's a partnership. How can we be a partner? How could we in a relationship, a healthy relationship together, and understanding, you know, and understanding there and being, it's about being present. I need to be present. I need to be present and learning about here, this, being present to in the relationship.
Thank you, Jean. Lyle?
For me, along with being present and listening, is owning some of the mistakes that I've caused myself and how it impacts my family. And then going with the idea of, and I love this phrase, when you know better, do better. That's something that I've started to practice. Don't be afraid to own up to your own mistakes. Once you know better, start doing better. And for me, as a partner, I'm always practicing that as much as I can. My wife is always gracious and patient with me. When I go through and I say something wrong, or if I do something wrong, she'll take the time to say, hey, this is how it impacted me. How can you do better? And I'll take the time to listen. And I'll work my darndest to make sure that I do better. Yeah.
Thank you, Lyle. Alfie?
Oh, so the thing that comes to mind in Samak, we have this concept, ayauch, which means law, precept, custom. It's the way to be. One of our most important ayauch is shlod, which is respect. And shlod isn't just politeness. It doesn't just mean to be nice to somebody or to say nice words to them. Going back to this concept of get well, warriors, people who do, our role in Shlot is not to just be polite, but to protect other people's God, other people's heart, their tuwu, their who they are inside. That's our main role in our custom and our language. And so it's up to us to get well, to protect the hearts and the well-being of other people that we're responsible to. All my relations.
Thank you, Alfie. Conrad?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I have the opportunity to get to visit with a lot of great people in my circle, and really think about my actions, action of others, and my role in supporting supporting people in my life. And there's instances that have come up that, you know, I give myself the space to provide deep reflection on my own actions. And one of the things that I try to communicate as best I can is impact over intention. You know, growing up and not too long ago, it doesn't, you know, it wasn't too long ago, and I'm so sorry if this triggers anyone, but you know, upon colonization, we went to schools that taught us these ways that were not enough to be somebody that we'll never be enough for. And then we're convinced that that's love. And so when I think about this, I think about ways it shows up in my life and ways that it shows up with my nephews, ways it shows up with my past partners. And I try to give myself that space to think about, you know, what is it that I can share with my nephews and nieces, and how can I love them better? And I think about and I look at all of our words and all the things we would share with each other in our ku'ik and in our stories. And if you look back way before colonization, if you look back at the way men talk to each other, we talk with so much love. We talk with so much care. My uncle said something to me the other, when I went over to Shitka, and he was like, when my time comes and I get to see our ancestors, I will tell them of all the good things that you've done. And that's the kind of love that I want to bring to my nephews and to my nieces, and for them to feel that. And I talk with my mom a lot about love, and she wants to make sure that people in her life feel that. And understanding that not all of our kids, because of colonization, may receive that kind of love. I do my best to try to love all my nieces and nephews and to make them laugh. I had one kid come in during my culture camp. He was an elementary kid, and we were getting ready to bead, and he always had this smile. And he sat down at the beginning of the day. It was like our third day, and he sat down and he was like, my dad's in jail again. And at the time, I didn't know what to do, but I did the best that I could to try to make sure that he felt loved, to make him laugh, to make sure he got his beading project done. And I feel that, like, returning back to those ways, returning back to the words that we share with each other as men, will put us in a place to where we can love our nephews into a place where they understand what healthy love looks like, whether it's between men or whether it's between men and their partners. And if you look back, you know, I have stories of, like, my great grandfather, you know, he thought he was in the hospital, and he thought it wasn't looking too good. And right then and there, he composed a love song, and he composed a love song for his wife. And I heard his voice for the first time when he sang that. And so I think about that, you know, quite often, and recognizing what it means to appropriately love, and to recognize when someone's uncomfortable, to recognize, you know, and just be a good listener, as my brothers were saying. So,
Thank you, Conrad. Bob?
My daughter was born with a midwife. I'm very happy about that. And I was able to be present at the birth of my daughter. And I even had the privilege of cutting the umbilical cord. And when I did that, there's nothing. I can't express the love that I have being present in the room where my daughter was born. And when the umbilical cord and placenta came out, I was able to take that and take it into the forest and plant it, put a tree on it. And it created a bond with my daughter that throughout our life, she's always stood by me. And she's always had unconditional love, both for each other. And so midwifery is a really powerful way for a father to bond with their daughter. And I now have two grandsons who also were born with a midwife present. And both of them are very healthy. And I was also being present for both of their birth as well. So midwifery really is a cultural tool that brings families together. I was able to even raise the plants that we used for my daughter's birth, and I was able to contribute to my family in that way emotionally. And so I really support what we're doing. I also, as a storyteller, I have seen young people's lives turn back on when they see positive people, positive men, dancers, singers, language warriors, really good-hearted people. I have seen young people's lights get turned back on, and we really need to do more of that. And once those lights turn on, powerful, powerful healing. And gosh, we're Tlingit and Haida. We have such a wonderful culture, and we have so much to offer them that we need to do more. And I'm excited to be around these good men. So thank you for bringing them together.
Thank you, Bob. And as I need to just take a quick moment and say, as we're getting close to time, I first want to check in with you guys and see if there's any follow-up that you want to add to this important question. And while I have a whole ton more questions that I want to ask you, I'm only going to ask you one more because I want to get to Michelle's update, and I want to be respectful of people's time. We will go over a little bit over. We want to make sure that we get a chance for questions too, so we're going to do our best. But I think this is a very important conversation that we're having right now, and I hope that this is the start of many. And so I just want to check in with you guys and see if anybody has something that they want to add to the current topic or question that we're talking about right now. And if you raise your hands, it's easier. Okay, Conrad.
I just want to acknowledge how grateful I am to be able to just listen to everyone. And, you know, it makes me happy to see Bob smiling and talking about, you know, bringing our culture and having more of that in our spaces, because I feel like that's one of the ways that's really going to bring us back to have those healthy men. There is a phrase that Kune taught me that I kind of wanted to share. And it was Katu Kaksakehin, which comes from Katu Kaksakihin, you know, and it comes from a peaceful river that untangles a person's mind. And so he shared that with me because we were talking about trying to create a space where men can healthily have conversations and talk about consent and talk about, you know, what an apology looks like. And, you know, we talk about colonization and we talk about the impacts of it. And so what does it look like to untangle and to bring our culture back into it and to pull these things apart? And so that's just all I wanted to share was that phrase, Katu Kaksakehin.
Ashish, Conrad. That's a really powerful thought. I mean, all these things that you guys are saying. Lyle, did you want to add some more?
Yeah, no, I think I just actually touched on it. Love is consent. It's an agreement between two consenting adults, and that when you move forward together, you move as a slave, as one person, and you work together. I love that. Talking to my wife earlier, we're talking about this here, and love is consent. I mean, when you move together as one, you see and you begin to stand as one. And the phrase that I used earlier, I wanted to make sure that I made sure that everybody knows where I got it from. Maya Angelou. When you know better, do better.
Sheesh. Alfie?
Vawa. I want to also quickly add to those things. When I'm talking about get well and what Lyle was sharing with us to do better, to get well, to be a warrior, a person who does, we need to be vigilant. We need to train ourselves. What does a warrior do? They train mostly. You rarely ever see them actually fighting. They're preparing all the time to be vigilant, to protect who they're supposed to protect. So we need to be a safe place. So us men here are standing up today. We need to be a safe place, somebody that women can talk to and be safe. It takes a lot of work to kick the ego out of our own selves and focus on our goat and the goat of our loved ones. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Alfie. And that's perfect segue into my next question. The reauthorization of VAWA is critical to ensuring Alaska Native women and American Indian women, children and families are provided safety and the resources they need. What would you say to the new generation coming up in regard to the passage of the Violence Against Women Act and ending violence in our own community and keeping all of our villages and communities safe? I think that I'll start with Bob on that question.
That's a pretty heavy question, and I really feel that if we never harm a child, if we never harm women, and if we go on to be good men, then we're going to raise the best generation yet to come. They're going to naturally pick up the drum, speak the language, sing, and really love the culture. But first of all, we must do no harm. Almost like an oath. An oath to never harm and to also do your best to never get a major felony on your record, because it's so hard to get that off your record and it will follow you. And so be careful and think about your life and be good. Be good. It's a lot easier to be good than to be bad. You use a lot less muscle and you smile more. So be good.
Cheers, Bob. Conrad, I'm going to you next.
Yeah. Telling the next generation about the importance of the passage of the funding and all the resources that this provides. It provides all this important prevention work. I was reading over it. It provides all these different spaces, all these different resources. And one of the things that I'm a really big, I can't think of the English word right now. I can't think of the right word right now, but, just supporting the education to our younger generation and providing them with understanding their feelings and, talking about things like what does an apology look like, understanding body language, understanding, there's a lot that I've learned growing up. And I'm so, like, again, I'm so fortunate to have like sisters who have called me out on my own actions, in such a loving way, and to have that kind of support and to have me think about, how do I address these situations. And so, one of the things that I kind of want is that also happening from our brothers. And so from those who identify as men, what does it look like for them to call out, those types of behaviors too? And so providing, those kinds of education of just like understanding our own emotions and just a place to process and understanding, again, impact over intentions, taking ownership and accountability over your own actions and owning up to it. And, when I see all the work that goes into this, and I'm so grateful for all the work that you put forth and that Clinton Haida does, I see all our sisters making sure that this passes, that this bill passes, and making sure that our sisters feel safe and calling out those men. And I feel like, one of the things that we have to do better at is stepping it up and calling it out ourselves. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard because it's going to be people that we know. It's going to be people that's in our circle. It's going to be people that we grew up with in our own families. And we have to begin asking those questions. What does accountability look like for our people? How do we call those behaviors out? That's really inappropriate. I don't really appreciate that. If you can just, please leave. Just taking the time to acknowledge those kind of behaviors, being okay when someone sets up a boundary with you, being okay when someone says no, and just providing those kind of spaces. And so just I really appreciate all the work that goes into the reauthorization and the support, and asking ourselves, how can we support this? But also, how can we support and do more as men in supporting and creating these communities so that we can grow healthy young men, while also making sure that we're supporting appropriately, our sisters in a good way.
Ms. Chish Conrad, you guys are making my heart proud and bringing tears to my eyes with your words. And thank you for being here. So, and we'll move on to Jean. We'll let you answer the question next.
Violence Against Women Act, it gives women hope, especially in the villages and in the in the reservations, behind those closed doors. It's like that there's some sense of a resource there, hope, people are watching on, and maybe we're being heard, and so there's that sense of that. And those who have worked so hard diligently on that. Thank you. And the other part is like seeing women are sacred. Women are sacred. Women are sacred. I mean, I can't say that enough. Women are sacred. And to just put that out there as much as buy a new car, we got to wear this outfit, or this will help you live a better life. I love what Bob said. Being a human being is compared to being what it means to be a man, is hard. I could be a human being, but what's that mean? And as men, we've got to heal. We've got to heal. And what does that healing look like from the past? I mean, deep past to the present and into the future. And what does that mean to be a man? A healthy man, a loving man. Alfie said about being that warrior, is about the people who do things. Doug Modig is talking about, and I hear him talking about being that warrior healer, that warrior healer, people who do things. Those healers are who are doing their own homework, taking care of this, but also it's like that accountability within your family, within your community, within your circles. Man, we've got to heal. We've got to heal and take a look at that and pass that healing on and be those warrior healers, those people who do things, and that healthy things. And again, I'm going to say it, women are sacred. Thank you for having this. Thank you. Yeah, everybody on here.
Thank you, Jean. Lyle?
Ewa, ya tekatan chauhas hastus sugaat hadti ya ushanahu dia yaki ye kadutsin on chauhas a tenkona chish yisewa akchi yukatangi ya tes lihashi yukatangi ye kwaya kwan on chauhas to all the respected women. And when I say on chauhas, the women of these lands, like my brother Gene was saying, you're sacred. You all are precious. Your words, they aren't going to just drift around. We're here to listen. We're here to set the example of what we should have been doing all this time. Just sitting down and listening. If we had done this a long time ago, we didn't have to worry as much. The biggest thing that we can do is get out and vote to make sure that we get the right people in place, to make sure that they are the ones that make things happen. Strong people who understand the movement of what is going on. This pandemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, people has to come to an end. We shouldn't have to be sitting here at a panel like this here, talking about relatives who have gone missing and no information within 10 years, 20 years. Their voices are still screaming into us. We need your help. We need your help. Listen to yourself. We need your help. We need people to stop brushing this aside, because our sisters, our aunties, our nieces, our mothers, our partners are tired of standing by themselves and repeating themselves and asking for that support. I think that what we can do best is support and push this act through, so that they know that they're being heard and that they feel supported, because enough is enough. Yeah.
Sheesh. Alfie?
Oh, I will come go down, Keisha, and I Simhan, Jean. What I would say to the new generation about this reauthorizing Qadzoganu Dahatli Halidoch to legislate. I'm embarrassed for the world that we have to pass legislation to prevent violence against Sigidam Hananach. It's embarrassing that this is the world we live in, that we have to pass a law to protect our Sigidam Hananach, our sacred women. And the next thing I want to say to them is Tinch, Ransom, let's go, do it, let's go do it. Vawa. It's time for us to Sagai Kulam God, be of one heart. Let's get our hearts together. That's what I have to say to the new generation. Patni Wilaishku, all my relations.
Thank you, Alfie. You guys have to help me because I've been so enthralled in your answers. Bob, did you get a chance to answer this question?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. With that, this seems a really odd time to do this, but we've gone over, and I want to make sure that we hear from Michelle. Like I said, this was a nice way to get to the work that she's doing. Is to announce the winners of the door prize drawings they are David Boxley Formline shirts. The first winner is Yodine Armour, and our second winner is Daphne Albee. You guys have made my heart happy and proud with your answers to these questions. I have so many more. I've enjoyed this panel. It's a dream come true to see this men's panel for violence against women. And I could just sit here and talk to you all day, but we don't have time to do that. And Michelle has done she's going to give us an update. She's been working really hard at getting some things to the finish line. So we hope that we can get them across. And Michelle, I'm going to let you go ahead now. Introduce yourself again. It's been a long afternoon. And then tell us, and there's going to be a call to action at the end of this. So not just for our panelists of men here, but also for everybody who's listening in, and for the other men out there who have been listening in too. This is a call to action for everybody so that we can get these bills across the finish line. So Michelle, on to you.
Catherine, President Peterson, panel. I was sitting here feeling like I was with my father and my uncles, and that's one thing that they always did was they would sit around my grandmother's table and listen to her in Tlingit. And I had to say, it's all I can do to hold back tears right now because my heart's just so full with the love and the knowledge and courage that you all have expressed today. And I think, the one thing I heard that I just want to say, I introduced myself, Michelle Demert, the Law and Policy Director for the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, former Chief Justice for Tlingit and Haida. And my father was the late Lawrence Demert from Klawock, and my mother is Sharon Demert. I had to say that, as I've said, I have 34 years of sobriety, and one thing, everyone should remember is to forgive yourself. I heard a lot of what we should do, and, sometimes we don't rise to the occasion, and that makes us feel bad, but you got to forgive yourself and move on. But you didn't come to hear me say that, but I just had to share that. Okay, there are 3 bills in the federal realm that I want to discuss, and 2 in the state. And the one that is most important right now is the Violence Against Women Act. And I want to raise all three of them because they all go towards increasing safety in our Alaska Native villages. And so the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA, is justice related. Another one is the Family Violence Prevention and Services Improvement Act of 2021, and that goes towards shelter prevention and services. And then the final one is the Survive Act, which is related to victim services. And those are all federal laws. And I want to just say up front, you have a voice and use it. We have a voice at the polling station. We have a voice now to tell legislators that it's time to pass these laws. I mean, if I have gone and testified before senators and representatives in DC, and I've never heard leaders talk about these issues in the way that you all did. And if they could just take your example, this would be a much better world. And Alfie, I couldn't agree more. It is embarrassing that we have to have a law that protects women. And so anyway, and then there's two federal bills that on MMIW that we all need to address. Now, as far as the Violence Against Women Act, Senator Murkowski is, she has really heard our communities over the last 8 years since the Violence Against Women Act of 2013 passed, and heard how we were excluded, all but Metlakatla, and how that has impacted our communities in a negative way. And she's worked long, hard hours. She's got, great staff, Amber Ebarb. But what this will do is the Violence Against Women Act will reauthorize the 2013 provisions, expands the definition of DV to include children who witness a crime, provides a specific finding for Alaska and jurisdictional challenges because of restrictive land settlements, such as the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and expands enforcement of travel protection orders, and provides some reimbursements and resources. So it's really important that it gets reauthorized. It was going to go for a vote this week. It might go for a vote next week, but two things: the Ukraine war has stalled things, as well as, the Supreme Court hearings will also take up some of, this usually goes to the Committee of Justice, Judiciary Committee. And so they're getting really busy preparing for that. So, but we're still optimistic that it's going to pass this month. So we have a subtitle B that is Alaska Tribal Public Safety Empowerment Act. These provisions empower tribal governments to work in partnership with state and federal authorities to address public safety in Alaska Native villages. Now, Senator Murkowski is one of the co-sponsors. Representative Young, he did his part in the House. Senator Sullivan has not weighed in on this. Senator Sullivan needs to hear from all of you, and you all need to also thank Senator Murkowski for her leadership. But also what's really vital is call the governor's office, flood him today and say that he needs to support this law. I'm told that he's going to be talking with DC tomorrow about the Violence Against Women Act, and he's not weighed in on it. He said that he needs to study it. These are provisions that have been out there for a long time, and he had an opportunity to study it. It does nothing to the state jurisdiction. It doesn't create any burdens on them, and it doesn't take away from their jurisdiction. So any sort of claim that they might make about the state being impacted negatively, it's unfounded. And you can say that, but call Governor Dunleavy and tell him that to support VAWA. Now, the Family Violence Service Prevention Act, again, this is a really important law that will increase the overall tribal percentage for shelters and supportive services. Will authorize tribal coalitions for the first time in FIPSA. It will make the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center permanent, and it also will make permanent the Stronghearts Native Helpline, which is a 1-800 24-hour 7-day-a-week phone line that people can call if they are feeling, if they're in a threatening situation, domestic violence, sexual assault, need help, need resources, call it. Survive. This has not been introduced yet, but this is the Victims of Crime Act. And right now we are just getting appropriations from year to year. Survive is, the Victims of Crime Act is only from a year to year basis. They have not taken up the legislation. And so what they've done is they've sort of put a Band-Aid by adding tribes to what the state gets. And that's not appropriate. We need our own law, because guess what? A victim of crime is not just a sole person that was victimized by an incident. There are multiple layers of secondary victims who are present. In our situation, colonization has left a huge scar on us, and our communities need to be able to heal. We have the highest suicide rates, but we can't use victims of crime money for suicide prevention or anything like that. Our boarding school victims, we heard a lot about issues related to that a little bit today. And so we need to also call on Congress to pass the Survive Act and to get that out there. So for the state bills, there are two MMIW bills that are introduced. There's one in the House and there's one in the Senate. There was a hearing this morning by House Representative Zolkowski. And so there's two MMIW bills, and there's not a lot of thought that either will get passed this session. It's a 2-year cycle. We're in year 2 of the cycle for both the state and the federal system. And excuse me, but we can make your voice heard. Call your representative, call your state senator, and tell them that they need to pass the Alaska MMIW bills. And the first one in the House would establish minimum standards, background checks for law enforcement, and a liaison in the public safety office. The senator's version that was just submitted, introduced this last week or two, is much more robust and addresses, recognizes how the criminal justice system is failing, and calls on a lot of improvements there in the MMIW categories. So just to sum up, there's 3 bills in the federal government that you all should weigh in, and there's a script that you can weigh in on. It's the Violence Against Women Act, reauthorize it. There is the Family Violence Services Prevention Act, reauthorize it. And then there's the Survive Act, create it. In the state, the 2 MMIW. And remember, your voice is heard. You matter. You can make a difference. And so, and I'm here for you all. And so, if you have anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I have a monthly MMIW call the first Friday of every month. And if you look at the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center Facebook, you'll see the call-in information, but we discuss issues that are important to our communities and how to make improvements. So I say Gunesh Chish, and Catherine, thank you so much for hosting us today. And President Peterson, we miss you today. Your voice would be, I can hear your voice through your brothers here today. So Gunesh Chish.
Thank you, Michelle. I know that we've gone over time, and I just want to thank everybody who stayed there and who stayed with us and watched this important conversation and received this important information today. It is a call to action. We heard from our prestigious panel of men who have joined us to have this conversation, this important conversation, which I believe is going to go a long way I hope it's the first of many conversations. I really do hope that we get to have some more of these, and that, even amongst ourselves. And I know, like I said, we've gone over time, and but we did ask, and we do want to close out in a prayer, because this is a difficult conversation to have, some of these. So, and we've Alfie, we're going to ask you to take us away in prayer, and there will be signing off. Gunesh Chish Hawa to everybody. And I know, Alfie, I didn't get the small Misham.
Yeah.
Yeah, forgive me if I didn't get it right. But
And,
thank you all. Thank you. It makes my heart really happy to have been here with you today. Thank you, Alfie.
Waiwa. Dimdip sagay kulam God. Let's all be of one heart. Nakwadam sim lachaga. Quinuyam na kamgosh kanda wel skaitaudium. Shikshakshin na gagodam da kamgoshkin da tatni misagoda kam. Pasakam dim skaiko gagodam. Samomam dim will you get kanum. Samomam dim will goshkam. Samomam dim will simhow meet wan.
Thank you. Thank you, Alfie. Last housekeeping thing I have to do, we have to thank our sponsors to Sacred Shine, Sacred Grounds, Elizabeth Paratovich Hall, Smokehouse Catering. Thank you all very much. That concludes our panel for today and our lunchtime chat. Thank you.
Gonna cheese. Catherine, gonna cheese. Michelle, gonna cheese.
Yuho.